So it all kind of goes back to my childhood. I'm the eldest of 3 kids. And growing up, I genuinely love kids. And I thought, okay, I like young people and I love science. And I thought, what can I do that allows me to combine both things together? I had pictures of doctors with kids and I thought, yeah, that's what I want to be. I want to be a paediatrician. But that's what stemmed my journey into medicine.
Man, and in your journey, have you ever had to hit that reset button this is not me, I need to figure out? Really?
Multiple times.
Oh, you are an investor?
Yes. I was investing in companies in the pandemic. Some of them I've sold and I've made money. Some of them I was like, I would never do this again. I see a guy in a suit. I'm like, so I'm looking at him, I'm like, is this the CEO? Is this not the CEO? And then I'm like, Uyiosa, if that is him, you have about 15 seconds before he disappears.
Welcome back to the Valuable Podcast. My name is Victor Sasanya and I am your host. And today we are kicking off episode 2 of season 3. And I am back with a very, very special guest. And honestly, no lies told, I've been meaning to get this guest on the podcast since last year. But we are finally here and I am joined by the one and only Dr. Uyiosa.
Hiya, thank you so much for having me.
It's been a while.
It's been a minute.
We were meant to do this last year.
Yeah, it's a bit tacky.
But how are you?
I'm good, thanks. I'm good. I'm excited for today's episode.
I'm excited. The first kind of memory I have of you is it's actually it's when you went viral on LinkedIn. I don't know if you remember, but I remember when you went viral on LinkedIn and you were dressed in your scrubs and you had the stethoscope around your neck. But what really stood out to me is that you had a blue card and it had it was like a blue teddy bear, a card, and it had your goals. You used to write it and it said, and I quote, become a better doctor. And it was dated back in 2011, if I'm correct. So that was over 10 years ago.
It's okay, don't age me.
But literally that was over 10 years ago and one of your goals was to become a doctor, and it's really a full circle moment because you're sitting here now as a doctor, so congrats.
Thank you very much.
I mean, how explain to me how did you know you wanted to be a doctor at such a young age?
Sure. So it all kind of goes back to my childhood. I'm the eldest of 3 kids. And growing up, I genuinely love kids. And I thought, okay, I like young people and I love science. And I thought, what can I do that allows me to combine both things together? And that made me think I could be a children's doctor. And so growing up, I had pictures of people, doctors, that is, with kids. And I thought, yeah, that's what I want to be. I want to be a paediatrician. As time has gone on, that has evolved. But that's what stemmed my journey into medicine, essentially.
Wow, a paediatrician. You knew what that word meant back in...
I mean, I didn't.
Back at
I just used
years.
to say that I wanted to be a baby's doctor. And then over time, people would say, that's a paediatrician. I thought, okay, cool. That's what I want to be. I want to be a paediatrician.
So you went to med school?
I did.
How long is med school?
5 years. To be honest, everyone's journey is different. My journey personally was 5 years. I was fortunate enough to get in as an undergrad, but for people who aren't, they will do an undergraduate in something else, and that could be 3-4 years, and then they'll do postgraduate medicine, which is 4 years.
Okay.
And if you decide to do an integrated degree, then rather than 5 years, you do 6 years, and in that 6th year, you basically get to study something else and graduate with 2 degrees as opposed to the 1.
So what was your route in terms of university or hospitals that you worked in?
So I went to the University of Southampton. That in itself is a whole story, a whole testimony as to why God is super amazing.
Okay.
In terms of the hospitals that I worked in, I feel like I've worked everywhere. I've worked everywhere along the south of England.
Oh, wow.
Literally. Just because in the university you're placed in different spots. And I guess the idea is for you to see different cases, have different exposure, see, different demographics and how medicine differs depending on where you are and the resources that are available to you. So I've been able to say that I've got a fair share of how healthcare works in the UK, which is amazing to say.
Yeah, and in med school, like for those listening that might not understand like what you guys actually do on placement, like do you have to specify like your interests, or do you just get placed in a hospital and placed in a specific role or task?
Yeah, so every university has their own curriculum, but in essence what happens is you will have a block, and you could have a surgical block, you could have an acute medicine block, and you'll be attached to that specialty. And the purpose of you being there is to see the different cases that come in, to see if you have an interest in that area. And then if you do have an interest, it's great. It means that when you do graduate and you decide to specialise, then you can specialise in that area and draw on the experiences that you've acquired. In terms of a day-to-day varies. So you could be on ward rounds, you could be seeing patients. Depends on, again, how confident and how capable you are at the time of your rotation. Because first year you versus final year you, the knowledge is different.
Yeah. I can attest to that, and I don't study medicine. Yeah.
And then you get to do practical things. You might be able to help out in theatre, take bloods. Like there's loads of different cool things that you can do. But it just depends on, like I said, your capabilities and the resources that are available to you. There's loads of staffing, great. Then someone can take you under their wing. And if staffing isn't amazing, then you kind of just have to work with
what you
what's
got.
That.
It sounds like you've been through it all.
I mean, it's definitely been a journey.
Yeah.
I have story times for days.
Really? Do you want to share one?
I can't. For confidentiality purposes, I can't. But loads of learning experiences.
Yeah, I mean, it must have been, because I saw like you became a doctor like 22, like
that.
22. Like, you know how young that is? Literally qualified. So what's the difference when you became qualified as a doctor? Like what was your first job, if that makes sense?
So my first job as a doctor was in anaesthetics. That's basically when people who have surgery, they have to be put to sleep, right?
Okay.
So we basically would put them to sleep.
That's what makes like you plug it in and it makes you like numb.
Yes, depending on what we've done to numb you and to put you to sleep.
Okay.
So I saw a lot of surgery. I was in theatre a lot. And then I had medical on calls as opposed to surgical on calls. So that's basically dealing with all the acute stuff. So if someone comes in and we think they've had a heart attack or a stroke, then I would deal with that side of things as well. And anaesthetics is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. You see so much. You get really comfortable stabilizing someone's airway. And I know that people who are watching this may not be non-medics, but basically, as a doctor, you're taught if someone is, unwell, acutely unwell, the first thing you want to do is make sure that their airway is protected. Just because if they're not breathing, then, well, the whole body basically can shut down. And in anaesthetics, you learn so many different airway maneuvers. You learn so many different tips and tricks on what to do with people, how to support their head. Actually paralyzing someone, like it was crazy. It was crazy. It was really good rotation, and the people that I worked with were amazing.
And was this full time? Like this was your first job?
Yeah, this was my first job out of med school.
Wow.
Well, my first block out of med school.
Block? What do you mean by block?
So when you finish medical school, you have this thing called foundation training, and it's 2 years long, and in each year you have 3 blocks.
Okay.
And you apply for the blocks that you get. And depends on how high your score is, then the more likely you are to get the actual choices that you want.
I see.
Yeah.
So that's foundation year 1, I'm guessing.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you move on to foundation year 2 after you've done your 3 blocks?
Yep.
Okay, so...
You do another 3 blocks, and then it's a wrap.
And then it's a wrap. Because I saw you get involved in not just like, I can already tell you're an amazing doctor, it excites you, but you got involved in like the entrepreneur side, and you were part of like the NHS clinical entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So like, how did you get involved in that?
So that actually goes back to final year. In final year, I found out about the NHS EP program. And you basically apply if you have an idea that can benefit the general public, or if it can basically improve healthcare. Like that's just the essence of it in a nutshell. And the purpose of the actual program is to equip you with business skills. It's to, improve your network. And I applied. I want to say I applied in final year. Went through the whole interview process and got in. and it's amazing. You learn a lot. You're with people who have done really cool things in medicine, have created really cool products to help change, patient outcomes and just make healthcare more accessible to all. And it's business. It allows you to literally combine healthcare, so clinical practice, and business together.
Okay.
It's amazing.
What does the program entail like?
So every year you have a different cohort, and if you decide to stay on, then you can. And you have different workshops, and it can be on literally different areas within healthcare. So it could be on intellectual property, it could be on, developing a product market fit, how the actual healthcare industry works and the different departments that are involved in it, funding, how to get access to that. Like, it literally is meant to help walk you through all of the different challenge points in business.
Wow. And so 1 year program?
1 year program, and then you can stay on if you decide to. And then if there's other opportunities that come up, which there always is, you can get involved in that as part of the program.
What would you say your highlight has been on being on that program?
I would say, aside from the content, just the people, you're literally with other clinical healthcare professionals. So they don't have to be just doctors. They could be nurses, literally anyone in healthcare. And just being able to speak to people and see how their healthcare experiences up until this point has inspired them to create a product is insane. So I would say the network is absolutely crazy. And it's nice knowing that there are people like you that exist. There are other people who are like-minded, who are entrepreneurial, who do care about making healthcare better for people, and aren't afraid to voice that and to do what needs to be done in order to make that happen. But it's so easy for people to complain, and everyone loves to complain, particularly at work, at lunchtime. Everybody loves to complain about how things don't work properly, right? Or how things could be improved, but no one actually, takes initiative to create something that can change it. So it's nice being in an environment where people are solution orientated.
Wow, yeah. I mean, I can imagine, because the NHS, like working for the NHS is a sticky one, right? Because we can see it all on the news. We can see it in the papers, like NHS overworked, underpaid. Even myself, like there was not a major accident, but something happened to me where I had to like go sit in the waiting room in Queen's Hospital. People know. Do you know how long I was waiting for? A very long time. And it's like, even when I was waiting, like, I mean, I'm a faithful man. I was praying as well, but I was beginning to get healed. I think it was because like I literally would have been there the next morning, if that makes sense. So, and I remember just watching like the staff like run around. This was quite a while ago actually, but I still remember like the staff run around, like they were very stressed, but I guess enjoying their work because they're taking care of patients, they're nurturing them. But I just thought like, this is a lot. So for you to say like people are complaining at work, like I don't, it doesn't even surprise me. So for you, like how do you, I guess, stay happy at work and just do you get, because it could be tough, like how do you sort of get through it?
That's such an interesting question. I don't think anyone has asked me that type of question before. How do I stay happy at work? I think happiness is an emotion, right?
Yeah.
And it's subject to change. So I would say, I'm going to stick with the word joy as opposed to happy, okay? How do I say joyful?
We like that word.
Yeah, no, how do I say joyful?
Yeah.
I think understanding why you do something and understanding your purpose. So I understand what my role is and the role that I play within the healthcare field. And so, okay, things are hard, and they're not hard always, but there are times where it's hard, right? But remembering the bigger picture, that keeps me joyous, that keeps me happy. Whatever word you want to use, you can insert it here.
Yeah.
But that keeps me happy. I think people, like you're meeting a complete stranger and they can come to you ill. And they are being super vulnerable with you about things that they've done that other people may not know, family members may not know, partners may not know, that people at work may not know, right? And then just seeing them coming at that point and leaving better and knowing that you did something to help contribute towards that, that makes me happy. And my patients tell me all the time, like they'll be like, you are amazing, or thank you for taking the extra 5 minutes to explain something to me and not rushing over. I think it's so easy sometimes to think about all the things that aren't working, but forget why it's being done in the first place. And we're doing it, or you should be doing it, to impact people. Yeah.
Wow. So like healthcare is really I want to say people's business, but it's not a business, but it's like a
we're centered around people. Like, it's all about making people feel better. It's all about educating people so that they can advocate for themselves. They can make better decisions for not just themselves, but their families. If you think about your home life, you probably picked up things, right? Because your mum or your dad have taught you it. And you might take that and pass it on to your kids. Now, that could be good things and it could also be bad things in relation to health, right? So being able to impact someone and know that you've not just touched them, but you've changed their perception around a certain thing. And so going forward, they're going to pass that on to their kids or to their friends and their neighbours. Like, that stuff makes you happy.
It's like generational transformation.
Yeah.
Like, you're playing a part where you're impacting like someone, one of your patients, but what you've done or the information you've gave, the encouragement, the little change in lifestyle tips is going to benefit, their offspring, their cousins, their family, their aunties. Okay. And is that impacts that you can see yourself having, would you say that fuels you like every day as you go to work?
Absolutely. And I can't lie, like, people at work are funny. When you find your tribe at work,
your tribe. Who's your tribe?
My people, like my colleagues. Like, when you find people who get you, who are like you, then of course that's also fun too. The patient aspect, people at work, and then all the other opportunities that arise from people understanding, the things that you care about. When you're able to just be you and be authentically you at work,
it's good.
It's a tick box.
Yeah.
Can you not be happy?
No, it's cheap. Joyful. Joyful.
How can you not be joyful?
You want to be joyful, not happy.
Yeah, because emotions are fleeting, right?
No,
it's true. Someone can piss you off the next minute.
And
do you know what I mean?
But you think about your purpose, why you're here.
Exactly.
How you've been blessed in order to serve others, and it makes you happy and joyful.
It makes you
Hey, but you know what's crazy? Like, I don't know, and this might be about of ignorance, or like, forgive me, but in terms of like working in the healthcare industry, what does progression and like rewards look like? Because I can tell you, I work in banking. I can tell you,
doesn't look like a corporate-based situation. Let me just put that out there.
Okay, exactly. But as in, like, do you have because you spoke to me about the foundation years. Okay, I understand that. Like, everyone has to go through that. But what makes you different from someone else, if that makes sense? How can you be looked as in, okay, you need to be up for promotion or being given like a day off, if that makes sense, because of your good work?
Sure. Right. So in terms of healthcare, it's slightly different to the corporate world. And I have conversations with my friend in the corporate world. I'm like, wow, you guys are really enjoying life. So what does progression look like? Progression is more so the number of years that you've served doing something in your training program. Does that make sense? So if I decided that I wanted to be a GP, then right now that training program is 3 years long. And so if you pass your exams, if you have a good portfolio, if you're doing all of the tick box things that showcase that you're competent, then you'll progress to the next level. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So your progression is based on your portfolio. It's based on your ability, because at the end of the day, you are impacting people and they need to know that you know what you're doing.
I see it. So how do you see it? As in, if I was to say to you in the next year, like, where do you want to be in this industry? Like, how do you see it?
Wow, you really came with a heavy question. That's really interesting. Where do I want to be in a year's time? So I finished foundation training in a couple months, and I want to take a few months to just chill, to just breathe, have a nice summer. I'm not saying I'm not going to work, but it won't be as intense as it has been in the last few months. In terms of training programs, I have a couple of options.
Okay.
So we'll see which one I decide. Yeah. I'm just weighing the pros and the cons of each one and just trying to understand how each program fits into, like I said, the bigger picture. And yeah, that's basically where I'm still in the figuring things out stage. Nothing's finalized. I think every other day I kind of change my mind, or I'll learn something new and I'll be like, whoa, didn't know this. Okay, might need to pivot a little bit, or might need to think about other things.
And that's okay.
Yeah,
that's okay. Because honestly, if I say I relate with you at this current situation, like, is you have to pivot, always thinking about, like, I feel like we want to figure it out quicker because we believe time is like not on our side. So the quicker we figure out what we want to do with our lives, and the quicker we figure out, okay, this is the career journey for me, so I can dominate this industry, increase my income, become a known person.
Seven-figure babe. That's what's trending on Instagram.
Literally, so we feel more comfortable once we know that. But the minute we don't know that, there's a bit of uncertainty.
Yeah.
So that can like kind of put us on edge. Like, are we doing the right thing as of right now? It's always about that time. Like right now in this time, where should I be? Oh, I'm a bit behind. And my friends or my peers are in Dubai and they're, not the Dubai.
Not the Dubai.
Yeah. So it's like, that's, I think at the back of our heads though, we have to always, and I get this a lot. They tell me like, you like, be proud of yourself.
Yeah.
Like you got to
pat yourself on the back.
Exactly. Like we both like you come a long way, and that's for anyone who's listening. Like if you ever beat yourself up or you're really tough on yourself because you want to be somewhere, I understand that. Like you have goals and ambitions and you want to be somewhere and you're not there at this current time, but you also need to encourage and motivate yourself by giving yourself a pat on the back, knowing that you are doing a good job. However, pick up your saddle, or what do they call it? What do they call that? Rucksack. you pick it up, your rucksack, and you keep on going because the journey is a long one, but you'll get there. In the end.
I think there's something to say about that though. I think never compare yourself. I shouldn't say I think. It's something that I genuinely stand by, and it's easier said than done because social media, everyone be creating these nice reels, and it can make you second guess, especially if you're at a different season. But I said this a couple of weeks ago, that no season is permanent. Like you could be in a very hard time, but it doesn't mean that you'll be in a hard time forever. And in that hard time, you're learning something new. Like you're developing yourself, you're building your character. Like these are the things that will keep you, regardless of how much money you're making, right? And I think it's important to remember that just because you're not where you want to be, it doesn't mean that you're never going to get there. Yeah. And my mum always says, the race is not for the swift.
That's true.
And it's like, yeah, like you want to get to a place, you want to get to, I don't know, a CEO position or the top position, but you want to be able to stay there. You can't stay there if you don't have substance. And sometimes we're so quick to be like, I want to be in this room, I want to be talking to this person. Okay, you can be in that room, you can talk to that person, but what are you offering? What value are you providing? Ooh. And that value comes from experiences. But if we're trying to rush and you're trying to, jump process, then the end result isn't going to be sustainable. Yeah. So it's actually okay to take your time. It's okay to be good at where you are now. And obviously keep having a vision and run towards it, but don't beat yourself up about it because you didn't have 10 houses by the age of 24. Do you know what I mean?
No, I hear it. And you know what you said, that word seasons, it just caught me. Because a lot of people might not understand what that means.
Yeah.
So what is seasons like? What do you mean by seasons?
Well, I'm not a dictionary. But I would say based on the little that I know of life, I'm not a life expert either, but we go through things. So you might be in a season where everything is working. You're touching something, it's clicking. Like you're networking, you're meeting this person, like you should do this, you should do that, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And you could be in another season where it's harder, or you don't really know what you're doing, or you're trying to figure out, do I go left, do I go right? Like life is so dynamic. Things change literally every single day, every second of the day. And when you compare the season that you're in your life, or the time that you're in your life, to your friends, they might be in their season where everything's up.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that because you're not as up as them, that you're failing.
Yeah.
This is your race. Like your race is different to your friend's race.
Yeah.
So even if we try to compare, if you feel like you're falling behind, but your purpose isn't the same as your friend's purpose, you may be exactly where you need to be, because it's all about building you so that when you get to where you've been destined to be, you can stay there and you can excel and you can impact the lives of people. Do you know what I mean?
No, I know what you mean. I'm just taking it in. I know what you mean. And I think the key thing about that with seasons is that we all go through it. 100%. There's this idea that you can skip a season. It doesn't work like that. And it reminds me of, in the Bible, like I said, I'm a Christian. That literally reminds me of, when King Pharaoh, right?
Yeah.
There was a man named Joseph, and Joseph was a dreamer.
Come on.
And like
tell us again.
Yeah. and the king, ruler of a great nation, he only knew seasons of rain, of abundance, of harvest, of ruling. Everything was good.
Yeah.
Then he had a couple of dreams, sort of like prophetic dreams that troubled him.
That said, whew.
He said, so what's this I'm dreaming about cows and all of this, and he had to get Joseph, who had someone who was at that time was in prison. He was in a season himself.
Talk about it.
He was in a season. He was in bondage, in a season in prison of no significance. A poor man. But little did he know his seasons was to change overnight, where he went to go and advise the king about the dreams he had. And he advised the king, the dream you're having is God is showing you that there's something called seasons, that you're in a season of rain, of harvest and abundance, but there's going to be a season where there'll be dry land. There'll be a season of where there'll be no food, there'll be no crop. And what I need you to do is listen to the guy that I sent that's going to advise you. He's going to give you the wisdom.
Yeah.
So now Joseph said, okay, this is what he's saying. So what you need to do is save up food for this season that you're about to enter in.
Yeah.
And what actually happened, of course, I'll just fast forward the story, is when that famine came and there was no food, right? What happened is that because of the wisdom of the advice of Joseph and the understanding of different seasons, the king had his nation where they had food for their people. Now the other lands, the other rulers that didn't get that information, they thought that it would be abundance and harvest all the way through.
Yeah.
They suffered.
Yeah.
They didn't save anything. So I think just to bring that back to like in context in our modern day, is that we go through seasons where it can be seasons of shame, seasons of reproach, like seasons of like I'm at my lowest time, but it's like you cannot skip. In this season, you're learning something, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what Joseph was feeling when he was in prison. He was in a season waiting for him to be used. Does that make sense?
I'm even going to touch on something here. Okay, you're like the thought processes are really flowing. Even from a Christian's perspective, God is a God of process. If you genuinely believe, that God has your back and that whatever vision you have, God will 10x it, 100x it. God doesn't want you to fall from whatever position he places you in. Let's talk about Joseph. How did Joseph end up in that prison?
Wow.
Yeah.
Tell me.
No, like his brothers sold him off. Then he was in Potiphar's house. Potiphar's wife was like, hey, like you're paying.
Yeah. He was the wise man though. He done the dash.
Listen, he left the situation, ends up in prison. But when he was in Potiphar's house, he had ownership, right? Like I shouldn't say ownership, but he had responsibility. All of those things, all of those life experiences where it looked like he was taking massive L's, prepared him so that when he was in the position to rule, he was able to rule well. Yeah. Does that make sense? And it just goes to show like you may be in a hard season, but it's preparing you for wherever you need to get to. And God doesn't skip process. Because imagine if Joseph had gone from being, the baby boy, dad's favorite, to being a ruler.
Yeah.
I don't know if he would have been able to execute the way he would have needed to.
He had to learn something key, which is humility.
Exactly.
That's another thing I think is so key. Like that's one thing that's personally transformed my life. When I learned about the extent of which women can be prideful. And there's like something called hidden pride. Like hidden pride, I think, is worse than like outward expression of pride. Like if someone's boastful, you can say that that they're boastful, they're boasting. But those who like don't boast, they think, I'm not prideful. But in their mind, there's sort of like some hidden pride, and I feel like you really got to deal with that earlier on than later. And sometimes you deal with that in seasons where you're humbled.
Yeah.
And we've all been humbled in life. Uni humbles everybody. That's just the standard one. That when you graduate, you get into early stage career life, then you get humbled again. So it's like you're continually being humbled, but no, on a real, like I learned learning humility from a early stage on can really, really help you, because now when you're growing, you're amassing, like aggressively moving towards your goals, you sort of won't be in a toxic nature to get whatever you want to get.
Exactly.
Because you know that well, if you did know, like, you'll know that, the higher you rise, the harder you fall.
Exactly. And I think also in humility, you learn that it's not about you. And if we go back to Joseph, since we're using him as our imaginary
Joseph is really getting this one now. Yeah.
I think when his brother, I think this is actually in the Bible. When his brothers came back and he recognized them, he said that, God used me to save you, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
And it's like, when you are in a position of power, it's not about you, it's about the impact that could be made through you. But if you're not humble, you'll be like, I'm the CEO of X, and the CIO. Do you know what I mean? Like, you forget about why you've been placed there in the first place. So humility is essential.
Yeah. No, this is so good. I just want to turn this into Bible study, but let's get back. Let's get back to the podcast. But even you saying that, it's so interesting because for yourself, like, you were in that position where I saw that you would get to shadow a CEO.
Yeah.
So like, you were in a position where you can see someone who's a leader, of what was it, the NHS Trust, or 600 million?
600 million.
Wow.
Can you imagine?
Now, what was it like shadowing a CEO of NHS Trust, 600 million? Like,
it was insane. I think in terms of the context, so I was at work. It was a busy day in A&E to the point where I'm having my lunch at 3 p.m. And in that year, I'd applied for a role as a non-exec. And so I thought, okay, if I'm applying to non-exec roles, I need to understand the executive department structure where I am. And so I was, doing a little bit of a Google, a little bit of a shaky LinkedIn, just trying to understand, the roles that these people played. And so the reason why this is relevant, going back to that A&E shift that I'm really having a delayed lunch at 3 p.m, I see a guy in a suit. I'm like, this face looks a bit familiar. So I'm looking at him, I'm like, is this the CEO? Is this not the CEO? And so I'm wrestling this in my head. And then I'm like, Uyiosa, if that is him, you have about 15 seconds before he disappears. Are you going to shoot your shot? Or are you going to stay here and be eating your jollof rice? Like, what are you going to do? And so I've never been fearful. I'm usually one to take risks. I was like, oh, I don't know if I should do it. And so I went up to him, introduced myself. I literally did an elevator pitch, 30 seconds, boom, boom, boom.
Wow.
This is me. Can I shadow you? He was like, yeah, email my PA. Then he was like, no, email me directly. And the rest is history. I did. And
wow, I've never actually heard of someone who's like, the elevator pitch. Like, we learn about how to do elevator pitch, but like, you have to do it like live. Oh, like, now this is the moment. So you just went up to him.
I literally packed my jollof rice away. I got up and I literally went up to him. Like, first of all, I had to verify that it was him because I wasn't 100% sure. And he was like, yes, that's me. And then I pitched myself and I asked, I would love to shadow you. And he said, yeah. And then that was it.
That was it. So it wasn't no program, no scheme.
No, it was just me being Uyiosa, looking for opportunities.
Wow.
And shooting my shot and just shooting my shot and see where it goes. So like, worst case scenario, he'll say no. And that's okay. At least I know that in my conscience, I tried.
You tried, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's been a trait, like I said, from back when you were doing this to get work experience, years later down the line, you're still putting yourself out there, shooting your shot, striking for those opportunities. So you shadowed the CEO, you learned about what the C-suite exec structure.
I was in a whole boardroom, a whole meet in the boardroom. I said, God, this is insane.
Really?
It was insane. And then since then, I've been able to do some really cool things as a result of it. So I don't regret shooting my shot.
Yeah. No, I can definitely tell that. And what struck me as well was like, you've had this sort of pivot, what I say, into like entrepreneurship, business. I can tell you're very interested in it. You've done the NHS clinical entrepreneurship. When you saw a CEO, you went to go shadow him, learn about the C-suite exec board meetings. And, recently you started your own newsletter and blog series. And you're not just talking about healthcare, but you're talking about business. You're talking about finance. And like, what made you start that?
I think I consume a lot of content. So I actually don't watch a lot of TV. If I watch a TV show, then you just know that I love it. But I read a lot of books. Like last year, I read 17 books.
Oh, wow.
Which is insane. So I'm really doing up Uyiosa's book club. But yeah, I read a lot of content. and I try to apply as much of what I read. Otherwise, what's the point in having knowledge if you don't apply it to see results, right?
Yeah.
And I thought a newsletter would be a great way for me to share the things that I've learned with other people in their 20s who are trying to figure it out too. Because this thing has no manual. Like, no one tells you how to successfully execute your 20s. They tell you how important it is for later down in life, but no one tells you, okay, but how do you really maximize your 20s? And I thought, I'm not an expert. This is just what I'm doing. This is just what I've learned.
Yeah.
And if people can gain anything from that, then cool. If it means that I have to read a book so that you don't have to read it, cool. Here's my mind. Here's what I got from it. And then if you are inspired to read it, then great. But I just wanted to create a community where we're all supporting each other. We're all sharing knowledge. And I can just say what I'm thinking and share that with people who may not know me, but could still benefit from it.
Yeah, I love it. I can't lie. I've been reading it, and for me, it's been amazing because I can see who you are. Like, you're not just a doctor. Does that make sense? Like, beyond the blue scrubs, like, who is this woman? And you actually wrote something that it was a piece, and it was about your value, your intrinsic and extrinsic.
Yeah.
Thank you. Value, and it was titled like, "How much are you actually worth?"
Ooh.
And you know, this is the valuable podcast, so we love that sort. But yeah, when I was reading it, I thought like, wow, this is good because you're not just a doctor, and you're more than that. And you were talking about value, and I was going to say like, what makes you valuable as opposed to you a valuable doctor. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because we can sit here all day and I can just dive into like doctor medicine, but I don't want to put you in a box or label you because I know like you're destined for great things outside of that. You claim it.
I receive it.
Yeah. So talk to us. Like, how does one actually measure their worth or their value?
So interesting. You really put me on the spot there. Wow. These questions are amazing. These questions are really good. How do you know your value? I think it comes down to understanding you. And that stuff takes time. Like, I've been in seasons where I really needed to understand, okay, but who is Uyiosa? Like, why do I care about these things? What is the big goal? What do I need to, like, what is my role on earth? And how can I execute that? Does that make sense? So that's kind of where it all stems from. And then thinking about your morals and your values, it's like, what things are your non-negotiables, and what things are you like, okay, fine. If it gets the job done, as far as it doesn't, compromise integrity, if that's something that you care about, or honesty, if that's something that you care about, cool. And then also understanding that you will get what you ask for. And this is a concept that I got from one of the books, and I think I made reference to it in that post that you're talking about. In life, if you ask for, I don't know, for £1,000 an hour, if you really want it, someone will pay you £1,000 an hour if they see you as valuable. But you can't ask for £1,000 an hour if you don't yourself believe that you're worth £1,000 an hour. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And of course, you can't just ask for £1,000 an hour and be coming to do X and nothing, right? But if you've developed yourself enough and you know that you're good at what you do, then yeah, of course, that you can ask for however much. But people will put value, people will put value on you based on your output. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, you could be, I don't know, like a talented singer, and you may not have tapped into that gift, but if you work in a role where you are just typing letters, well, anyone can type letters. And so that job role will be, I don't know, priced at X amount per hour. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Whereas if you, I don't know, were able to take advantage of the fact that, my singing could potentially bring clients, or, I don't know, your clients have an interest in music, or, I don't know, the music industry, maybe I could combine my interest in music and the fact that I type letters. Your value goes up.
Goes up.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think to summarize that, you need to understand what you bring to the table, and you need to not be afraid to ask for what you think you're worth. But you also have to be good at what you're bringing to the table. Does that make sense?
We need to break that down. that makes sense, and it's good. It's really good because I do believe as well, like, unless you believe something, why should someone believe
Absolutely.
in you or on you or whatever you want? So you got to first make that mindset shift. And I know the book you referenced was Think and Grow Rich, one of the ones everyone talks about. But I always have to remind myself that for the first time, someone might have actually heard about this book. So Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, if I'm correct. It has so many different chapters about, mostly focused on the mindset, but also like how to change your perception around money and what it means to like be rich. And what I loved about what you said is that not only do you have to think about what you're bringing to the table, is it good enough, but it's also you have to backtrack and say, like, how do I actually increase my value add? And this is what I was talking about on a different sort of podcast. And one thing that I've just, since you were talking, just realized is, like, sometimes it takes time. It's just a process. Like, you can't be the best singer overnight, so you're not going to get paid those millions or thousands instantly. So it's like there's a journey to unlock the full potential, or your full earning potential, should I say. Do you agree with that? Or?
I agree. And it goes back to what we said earlier about process timing. Like Beyonce, as an example, is being paid a lot of money. But if you listen to her early interviews, sis was doing up rehearsals in heels.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, like she was really about mastering her craft. And I think it's so easy to think about, oh, I want to get X, I want to do Y, I want to do Z. But have you mastered your craft? Like, do you even understand what your craft is? Let's start there.
But I got to interject. But what if it's like, do you understand what your craft is? What if I have many different crafts?
Okay, what do you believe your vision is? Like, what do you believe your purpose is, and what is your vision? Because everyone has multiple gifts. I believe that people have multiple gifts, and I do believe that gifts are used differently in different seasons. But in terms of the big picture, in terms of the legacy, if there was one legacy you wanted to leave behind on Earth, that it's like that legacy is synergistic with your name, or synonymous with your name, I should say, then what skill sets or what gifts do you need to really refine in order to allow that to happen? Like, that kind of helps you prioritize which gifts to use or utilize.
Yeah.
And I do, like I said, life is very dynamic. So in one season, you could be using, 3 set of gifts. And then that could contribute to a legacy. And then you might, take the giftings and then apply it elsewhere. But it all comes down to legacy. It comes down to purpose. It comes back down to your big picture and what you want your impact to be.
Yeah. No, that's good. It's like a long game. Like, you have to, and the fact that you always bring it back to this purpose thing. So you always bring it back to, who are you?
Yeah.
What are you here for? And what is this mission? What is your end game? And like, when you know that end game, like, what are you playing for? Like, why are you in this job, or why are you learning these skills? Why do you have to like join a new network or get rid of some old friends? Because this is all propelling you to this like big thing you're meant to be doing.
Otherwise, it's so easy to be someone else. Like, it's so easy to be someone else. If something becomes trendy, then, and you don't understand your why, then you could very easily just morph yourself into whatever's becoming trendy.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't know if people find fulfillment in that, if they do it. But when you know you, it just makes things a bit better. Like, you can hone things down back to the center. If you ever feel like you're getting lost, you can do a reset, because you kind of know what things are important to you, as opposed to just, like following the crowd, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, and in your like journey, have you ever had to hit that reset button, like, multiple this is times. Not me, I need to figure out? Really?
Multiple times. I think before I was very vocal about the fact that I really love healthcare, but as much as I love healthcare, I'm really interested in business and finance. I was very shy to talk about my business and finance side. So I only just talked about the healthcare side of things, and that made me unhappy, because I knew that in, behind the scenes, I was very much doing things in the business and financy world, but I just wasn't talking about it. And in not talking about it, there were people who I could have helped sooner that I didn't get the chance to help because they just didn't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I had to do a reset, and I had to think like, okay, cool. What's my purpose? What's the big picture here? And am I doing things every day that can help contribute to that picture? Because one thing that we have to accept, whether we like it or not, where you are now kind of is a compound of decisions that you have made and the fact that life has happened.
Of course.
And so you have to take accountability for that.
Yeah. And in you doing that, like hitting that reset button and thinking about, wow, maybe I was like a bit muted about the business and finance stuff I was doing whilst I was still on this journey to become a doctor. Like, you've come out your shell. And is it something, have you ever regretted it or no?
No. The only regret I have is I should have done it sooner.
Wow. And I know, because whilst you're in university, you know, your first business or startup you done in your second year at med school, Medsimple.
Yeah.
So talk to us, what was Medsimple like?
So Medsimple kind of was as a result of my journey. So like I said, getting into medical school, no network, no other medics, I didn't have anything that I could leverage. And then coming into medical school and hearing people be like, yeah, I just called my dad's friend, or application? What application? I kind of just turned up, so they're like, yeah, sure, come with me. And, you know, comparing those two stories, I was like, wow. And there's so many people, particularly in the Black community, there's not a lot of us that are in the healthcare space. Obviously, since I've started, there has been a lot of work in that area, and it's better. And so basically, Medsimple was birthed from I want to be able to help people who come from similar backgrounds to myself, don't have anything, don't know what to do, but need some form of guidance. And so I created resources, I did workshops in schools, I tried to speak to different universities to see if we could do collaborations, particularly in the widen participation space. Like, I was really big on let's try and leverage the playing field, and let's try and make it easier for people who are bright but just don't know how to utilize it to get to where they want to get to.
Yeah, wow.
And then since then it's evolved, but yeah, that's
amazing.
Yeah.
And so, like, what's the main aim of Medsimple, and who does it serve? Would you say now has the people you've been serving changed since you started it and since it's operating now?
Sure. So now we predominantly work with schools. Just because there's a lot of impact that can be done there. If we're able to change a curriculum, think about the number of kids that go to school as part of, you know, the requirements, right? And if we're able to make that change once and keep it, then you're impacting not just the individual, their families, how they think about certain things, like their perspective, right? So we work with schools, we integrate our workshops into the curriculum, and we make sure that whatever, you know, targets and things that the schools want to achieve within their cohorts of students, we support them in doing that. And now it's not just specific to medicine, but it's healthcare in general. So there are, you know, students who want to be nurses, they want to be occupational therapists, they want to be, you know, healthcare assistants. They want that. It's not just about becoming a doctor, and we need healthcare professionals.
No, we do.
We do. Like, we need more people in this space. So it's just helping to support them in achieving that and providing them with alternative pathways. Now you can become a doctor via an apprenticeship.
I didn't know about that one.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes. It's a new thing.
As in without going to university?
As in, it's a full apprenticeship.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. They funded I think it was 200 spaces, and it's something that they're going to run. But they're trying to make it more accessible, because there are, you know, students that are really dedicated and they're really passionate, but they may not necessarily have, you know, the A stars or the A's that you've had to require.
Yeah, that to get into med school, like, it's really...
It's an early decision. You can't just wake up in year 11 and be like, oh, I want to apply to medicine, unless you're just naturally bright. But I know, as for me, I really had to work hard to get my A stars and my A's.
You were working since 12 years old. You know. Oh, wow, I see. And Medsimple do you operate across, like, the UK or just in London? Or
So it's across the UK, but our area of specialty is London.
Wow. Yeah. And how would somebody's, like, listening, whether they sort of their teacher in a school or they have some sort of connections to school, like, if they wanted your company to run some services or workshops or talks, like, how would they reach out to you or sort of get involved?
So we have a website. So it's I feel like I'm doing a cheeky plug. So it's www.medsimple, so that's medsimple.co.uk, or they can send an email to info@medsimple.co.uk. That's how they can do it.
That's amazing. We need to get connected. We need more healthcare professionals. We have services, companies who are dedicated to actually helping the next generation of young people break into this industry. So please, even if you're listening and you think, oh, there's some way I can help and I can connect, or I can reach out to a school, a teacher, a therapist, whatever it is, like, please do your best to try help. And we're just basically, bettering the whole economy, our whole nation.
Exactly.
in doing so. And what surprised me is, like, you mentioned in Medsimple, like, do you have a team, or is just you running this like one bandwagon?
Yeah, so we have a team.
Oh wow, you do?
Yeah.
So how does that work? Because I'm just so fascinated and curious to know. You went through med school, you've told me about shadowing CEOs, you're working on so many different things, yet you have a company and you've built a team. Like,
I mean, it works. I don't know what to say. Like, it works. I think it's all about finding people who understand the vision. And I think when people buy into the vision and are just as passionate as you are, it makes things a lot easier.
Yeah, I've heard about, like, one of the most important hires is your first hire. So whether that's someone who's paid or volunteering, like that person, like, do you remember your first sort of hire for Medsimple?
Social media.
Okay.
Yes, I know that now I'm a lot more into the world of social media, but at the time I was just a babe behind the scenes. Like, I wasn't on Instagram until late. I think like fourth year of uni was when I made Instagram. Like, okay. I was a late bloomer in the world of social media.
Yeah.
And so I needed someone to basically help create content for us, and to basically take the content that we had but make it to a form that people could digest and people could relate with and pass on. So it was the world of social media. Social media
is important. So I had Instagram, if believe it or not, I had Instagram when I was 14 or 15 years old.
What were you doing on Instagram at 14?
Yeah, I have a good excuse. So some of you that didn't know, I used to run my own clothing business. Wow. Yeah, so when I was in year 10, I think, year 9 or year 10, because I remember when we used to use Blackberries, right? You had a Blackberry, right?
No, I didn't.
You didn't have a Blackberry?
I didn't have a BBM. I wasn't a BBM babe.
Oh, wow. So I had a Blackberry. I had the Blackberry Curve 9320.
Wow.
Upgraded to the 9360 with a little scroller in the middle, like the touch screen, like the flat pad one. Then I remember I got my first iPhone. Then with iPhone, you had apps. So I downloaded Instagram. Mm-hmm. Now, listen, I just thank God that nobody will find those old accounts, because how we used to take pictures and comment, with the lip bite. And
who are you trying to move to your social media?
Hey, listen, it was a long time ago. But that's not the reason why I was on it. So I had a clothing brand. So I actually, at the age of 14, my clothing brand was called Young and Gifted Clothing. So if you actually search on Instagram, it should be still there. I never deactivated the page, but so at literally 15 years old, mm-hmm. I used to like host photo shoots. I used to like market my clothes. I had to take pictures, videos. Used to go to the park. Used to like travel into London, organize like photo shoots. Like, I always tell my boys this. Like, I remember one photo shoot I went to and I saw Eva. You know the model now. Yeah, I remember a time ago, and she was like modeling, and I always say, I used to say hi to her. I used to talk to her. But like, I met so many amazing like models and like people in the creative industries also. I was doing it, and I learned how to use Instagram. Like, and it was just me, right? So I'm designing the clothes, I'm building the brand, I'm using Instagram, I'm looking at engagement, I was selling, like, create my own website. So I think from that experience, having the business account and also my personal account, I sort of saw the difference between what it's like to use social media to literally you're trying to draw in attraction and things like that, on what it's like just to post. Because back then, personal accounts was just like for family. I think I was on private. Like, you could not see what I was posting. Hence why we're posting, a bit.
Exactly, what was posting for you decided to.
But nowadays, I think the time you got into it, maybe in your fourth year, a couple of years ago, social media is a circus right at the moment. And like, you could get really lost, or like you can sink or swim, because you can come on it and as we spoke about millionaires, you can get caught up, and because the algorithms are getting better as well, depending on what you watch and what you consume, it will just keep on shoving more and more, like to a point where on my explore page I just used to have rubbish, so I had to click like not interested. So I actively took that decision to personalize my Instagram feed to make sure like these algorithms, these huge tech companies won't get the best of me. Like I will not play into their game. It's true. Like you have to put those checks in place, and I think it's so important, because otherwise we live in a world where we are being in our thoughts, our mind is just being engineered. Does that make sense? So so that's why I was on social media.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think going back to what you said just now, I think it's important to be self-aware, so know when your consumption is too high. Does that make sense? Like you need to be able to check yourself. I know people who have timers. I have a timer on my Instagram. I have a timer on all of my
You have
apps.
a timer?
Instagram, LinkedIn, everything has a timer.
But wouldn't that be contrary? Because I don't have a timer, but that's because I try to keep self-aware. Like I spent too long on this, so get off it. Like I don't have something reminding me to get off the app.
Fine. I would say that's interesting. It works. I would say for me, when you're scrolling, you can blink and time has gone. Like you can, especially if the content that's being fed to you is things that you like. I'll just be giggling to myself on my phone. 30 minutes is gone. Like, and 30 minutes, you can do a lot in 30 minutes. You could do a lot in 30 minutes. You can meal prep in 30 minutes.
You can do a lot in 30 minutes.
You can do a lot in 30 minutes. So for me, setting a timer is like, okay, no, it's done. Like you spent 15 minutes today. Girl, you spent 15 minutes.
You need to get back to work.
You know? So I think yeah, there are things that you can do to help limit the time that you are spending on social media, but also understanding that the things you see feed into you. Does that make sense? And if you see the same thing a lot, you can forget that it's not real, and you can start to normalize it, which links back to what we were saying earlier about people comparing seasons, right? If you see that everyone's making reels about Dubai, you kind of forget that you've already seen 5 people, but it's 5 different people. And so subconsciously you might think the whole world is in Dubai. Yeah. And I'm here eating Indomie, you know?
And the Indomie, you know. No charge against Indomie.
No, we love a chicken. That definitely helped me in exam season, let me know that.
Is it?
Yeah.
No, I definitely get you, but you know, you're very right. Like we can be consumed in our own world, but on the flip side, like social media is great. Creating content is great.
Amazing.
And like you started creating content on YouTube now. You got your own YouTube channel, you're putting out videos. Like how was it? Because creating content is not easy. Listen, creating content, it is not easy. If we told you how long it took to get these cameras set up, they don't even know it. But it's all for you guys. But like, how did you think about how you wanted to create your content, like videos, like audio? Like
I'm still at the very early stages in comparison to you. I'm gonna have to pull you up and be like, sir, I need help. But no, I'm still very much at the early stage of my journey. I think YouTube has been something that has been on my mind for years. And people be like, Yosa, you should do YouTube. And I'd be like, no. And like I said, social media was not my thing. Like I was the girl behind the scenes. Like if you knew of me, fair enough, but I wouldn't be the one to put myself out there publicly. Does that make sense? And so this year I thought there's a lot of things that, like I said, I know, and I'd like to share it. And if it helps people, cool. Particularly from a healthcare standpoint, I really wanted to share and just demystify certain things that people think about health that isn't evidence-backed. So I thought, okay, if I want to do that, I might as well talk about the other things that I'm interested in. So talk about the businessy things, talk about the finance things, talk about things, related to self-development, and just, mesh it into one. And so if people want to learn about diabetes, or they want to learn about sickle cell, or they want to learn about high blood pressure, which affects a lot of people, they can. And then if they want to learn about investing or how to get a good credit score, they can do that too.
All on the same page?
All on the same page.
For free?
It's for free. It's for free. Like I really want to be an older sibling to someone else that I wish I had.
I see.
Just to make life easy, because it's not easy. When you're trying to figure this thing out, it's not easy.
It's not easy. And I think you're doing a great thing again doing that, because you don't have to, and it takes time to set things up. Think about what you're saying exactly. If you want to challenge something that's not evidence based, like you're really putting in time and effort to put that on. So where can they find you, watch, subscribe?
Guys, literally on everything. My handle is at Dr Uyiosa. So that is DrUyiosa.
Amazing. And who inspired you? Like you said that lots of people said you should start a YouTube channel, but I just can't help but think like Ali Abdul, like as in the YouTuber who was an ex-doctor and he just like created so much good content. I'm not sure if it was health to begin with. Maybe it was.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so it was health to begin with, and it was vlogs, and now he pivoted into like productivity, then like business and finance. And one thing that shocked me, like every year he documents how much money he makes and literally breaks it down to a T. Like, I make this much on articles, I make this much on courses, I make this much from speaking events or whatever it is, and like the guy's making millions. Like, it is so inspiring to see. Like, would you say Ali Abdul was an inspiration of yours as well?
Yeah, Ali Abdul, absolutely. Patricia Wright, absolutely. Like all the OGs on YouTube, just because they were doing it back when YouTube wasn't a thing, and they were bold enough to say, I'm interested in this, or I like this, I'm just going to put it out there and see where it goes. And I think also just knowing that there are people out there who still don't have access to information. Okay. Like, we think things are common knowledge, but they're not common knowledge until you kind of speak out about it, right? And I thought I want to be able to, you know, do my role and play a role in helping to make things a bit easier for other people to understand, and to shed light on things that people just don't know. Yeah.
And there was one, this was part of your newsletter that you done, but I think you mentioned it as well, the book that you read, The Millionaire, Fastlane Millionaire?
Yes. That book is amazing.
Yeah, I haven't read the book, but I read your notes on the book, and I was like, okay, it's an interesting concept about time. You said something like time is not on your side or something like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, talk to us. What is that book? What's the key takeaways?
Right. So that book is interesting because it kind of talks about the different ways to wealth. I know some people don't care about money, so that's fine. If you don't care about money, then that's okay. But if you are interested in money, there's a lot of talk about investing in stocks. Particularly, loads of people like to invest in ETFs. So, you know, the S&P 500 is like a buzzword. Everyone kind of invests in that just because of, you know, the data associated with it. But the book basically highlights, like, yes, you can get wealth investing, you know, in the S&P 500, taking advantage of the concept of compounding, but that wealth might be seen at the age of 60. And if that's what you want, if you're, you know, trying to build wealth for your pension around about that age, or to pass on to your kids when you pass on, then fair enough. But if you want wealth now, then that concept doesn't really help you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no.
And that's where the whole, you know, idea of time isn't necessarily on your side. And he also touches on it depends on when you start. So if you start, you know, investing at the age of 25, then compounding works on your side because you've got more time, right?
Yeah.
Compared to someone who starts investing at 50. And then we don't control the economy. We were in a pandemic. Now we're in another crisis, right? And the stocks aren't performing as they should be. And so if you were completely reliant on the fact that, you know, in 2023, I should have X amount, well, you know not to sell when it's negative because it becomes a permanent loss, right?
Yeah, you realize your loss, yeah.
Exactly. And so, again, time isn't on your side because time isn't something that you can control. And the third idea that he touches on in the book is the fact that time is a limiting factor. So if your salary, not that I have anything against 9 to 5s before people come for me, but if you work at an hourly rate, there's only 24 hours in a day. If your hourly rate is fixed at, let's say, £30 an hour, you can't work 24 hours. One, is illegal. It's illegal.
Yeah.
But also you need to sleep, you need to eat, you need to commute, you know, to work if you're not working from home. Right, you need to do those things. And so you can't actually use time or your hourly rate as a thing to get wealth.
Yeah.
Because the 24 hours is fixed.
And it's capped.
It's capped. You can't get 25. Where are you going to get the 25th hour from?
You know, I'm sure I've seen some sort of sayings or books like 25/7 instead of 24/7. I don't know. People will be catching that in their dreams. Like. But no, I completely understand you. That's so interesting because I read a book called The Automatic Millionaire.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of it?
I think I have.
So
I read it though.
The concept in this book is that you get rich slowly, but the whole concept of an automatic millionaire is that you set automatic sort of systems for you to save and invest and compound your money. So like
Yeah.
it talks about, I think someone was on a 25k salary, like, and this is a couple of years ago, so not in context of now, but you save, like, let's say you save 10% or how much every single month, but you automatically set investment. So instead of you consciously thinking about what to invest in, you set it on a default. For an example, this is not financial advice or anything like that. You can download a Moneybox app account, and with Moneybox you can set like a weekly investing where Moneybox will go into your account. It will take out a certain amount of money you specified, and it will invest it into either individual stocks that you choose or an index, like you mentioned, so S&P 500, Europe.
Sure. So it's a bit like, so basically the book is telling you to automate your life.
Yes.
Kind of thing, like create systems in place.
Exactly.
Right.
But it also emphasizes the fact that if you want to become a millionaire, I think, like you said, it depends on when. Is it now or when you're 60? Like pensions, because a lot of people don't know about the tax like incentives that you have. So for example, you mentioned investing in indices. Now we can drop some financial game, which is not financial advice, but a lot of people focus on S&P 500 because it's talked about. Now, S&P 500 is the top 500 companies in the US. So what it does, it tracks the US economy. But so many people forget, like, there's a whole world outside of the US. Exactly. So now when we think about indices, there's stuff like the CAC, right? That's the French one. The FTSE MIB, right? You got the Italian one. You got the SMI for the Swiss.
Yeah.
Like UK FTSE.
Yeah.
So there's so many different indices, and you can literally now take not a bet, but you can have your own view or perspective. Okay, I'm going to invest in this economy because in this 20, 30 years of time when I'm going to retire, I don't think US is going to be the number one economy in the world. I don't think the dollar, and we've seen this on the news, the new changing world order, and I'm not going to get into that, but people have their sort of punts and their bets. So I think but yeah, so that book talks about, okay, choosing your investment vehicle, automating it, then increasing your income. But over time, what you should see, especially if you're investing in the stocks and share ISA, individual savings account, which is tax free, meaning that the money that you put into it, if you bought an investment, let's just say like £1,000 of one stock and you sold it at £2,000, you made 100%, that is tax free. It doesn't you won't get taxed, it won't get added to your income. So it's like they emphasize, okay, put your money in tax-free investment vehicles, automate it, and like over time, as this compounds, again, very subjective to time, because I mean, now is again, not financial advice. My personal advice, I think, like right now where interest rates are, saving in cash is not that bad. And maybe why stocks are taking a bit of a hit. But I think it's a good time to actually think about, if you were to put your money into like high interest savings account, like it's not a bad view. But I think the main thing is having a plan and automating it. So I don't have to, oh, I need to deposit this. I just know this comes straight out of my account, and over time, default, you'll just forget. It's the same way because we pay for Netflix, for Spotify. And when they increase it by that £1 extra, we don't really know because it's just on default.
Yeah.
But it's something.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
But what's that book? Let's give it to them.
The Millionaire Fast Lane.
The Millionaire Fast Lane.
Ali Abdul actually recommended it on LinkedIn. And I said, I haven't heard of this book before.
Yeah.
So I'm going to read it. But yeah, it's really good. If you like equations, it kind of breaks down, wealth in the slow lane route, so i.e. when you're in your 60s. And it really helps you to understand, okay, these things are a limiting factor. How can I take the things that are limiting factors and flip them into things that aren't limiting factors anymore, or things that are within my control? And so it talks about, royalties. It talks about e-commerce and e-products, all of the different things that you can do to gain wealth at a young age. It talks about, starting your own company. Again, that kind of needs time, depends on when you started it and stuff. But yeah, it basically compares both methods.
And I guess from reading that and like even your interest, like, is wealth something that you're trying to amass? Do you want to be wealthy?
That is a really interesting question. And one of my friends pops into my head because we have this debate all the time about, whether or not wealth is ethical, is it unethical? I mean, yes, I would love to be in a position where I'm not stressing about money. I'm not stressing about, how much things cost. In terms of, the impact that I'd like to make, you kind of need money to start things. Yeah. Yes, I do believe, in the abundance of money. But sometimes when you have the money, it's easier than having to go out and look for it, right? So yes, having liquidity is important because it just makes things a little bit easier to do.
Yeah, no.
But it isn't a limiting factor if you don't have it.
Yeah, no. I mean, I guess money
Because
can
you
be.
can find it. Because you can find it.
You can find it. Okay, I understand that.
Yeah.
And the reason why I ask is because in the field that you are in like as a doctor in the healthcare industry, one trend that I've seen, again, you can challenge me. I've seen like, going all the way back to Ali Abdul, I've seen like a lot of doctors and medics are not like, they're like 1 foot in there and 1 foot out, trying to, and not that doctors can't build wealth or anything, but like they're pivoting into something else. I've actually heard a term. It's called runaway medic. and a runaway medic is someone who goes through medical school, does all of that, then you just see them in consulting or investment banking or like private equity.
So many people I know would be so attacked.
I'm sorry, but that's the term like for it, and I just wanted to get your perspective. Do you think that happens because one, people go through medical school but find out like redirection, purpose, this is not what I want to do and I want to do something different? Do you think two is that people go through medical school and they realize like they want to be a wealthy or they want to be of some sort of status that I can't get this in the UK, work for NHS?
Oh, I think my views are really interesting just because I like to do my research and I like to speak to people first before I form my view. And there are people within the NHS that are making money. Okay. Now, I'm not saying, I think, you know, a millionaire typically has 7 streams of income. Okay. I don't think that all medics are quote unquote runaway medics. I think the ones that happen to be runaway medics are just talking about their journey, but it doesn't mean that everyone is considering that.
Oh yeah, of course.
I would say that it just I don't know, it just depends on how you apply yourself. If you're interested in surgery, then you could have your own surgery clinic. That's still you know, delivering clinical care, but you are delivering it privately. I don't know if that still counts as a runaway medic.
No, that doesn't count as runaway medic, because that's something like, don't get me wrong, like that's still in the field. I guess the term I described, what I've heard was people who like exit medicine,
as in they leave.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to my point, it can still be attached. So if you're a consultant or a private equity, you can still be like your sector is. Yeah. Do you get what I'm saying? Your sector is health.
So I guess going back to your question, is it why people are becoming runaway medics? Like, what has inspired them to become runaway medics?
Yeah, like is you as a doctor, like, have you seen any sort of trend working in the profession that would encourage someone?
I don't know if there's anything in particular. I think it just comes down to the individual. Okay. Like, some people kind of always knew that it was always going to be healthcare and something else. And so maybe they've, you know, decided to do the healthcare route to gain experience and then do the something else to gain experience and then find a way to merge the two later down in life, right? It kind of depends on how far people are into their journeys. Some people do medicine and realize that it's not what they wanted, and then they go through the whole journey of trying to figure themselves out. Other people, you know, just don't know what they don't know until they get themselves into it. I don't think that wealth is always the driver behind why people leave. I think it's a lot more, I think the issue is bigger. And I think, you know, different people care about different things. If you care about, I don't know, your work-life balance, and if that's really important to you, and you think that working less than full-time as a doctor still doesn't give you the hours that you want outside of work, then you might leave. Does that make sense? Yeah. If we have a sick family member that needs to be looked after and you can't be on calls, you know, back to back, then again, you might leave. I think one thing that's interesting is people who leave do come back. I think people might leave and go abroad and see what that's like and then come back. So I don't think that wealth is the big driver on why people leave. I think if someone has identified that wealth is important to them and they don't want to, you know, explore the different ways of wealth, they don't want to explore the different ways of creating wealth in the UK setting, health or the UK healthcare space setting, then they might leave. But I think it's loads of different things as opposed to one.
No. I mean, I agree. There's no like right
that's
answer.
That's what I think.
I was just curious to know. But I'm 100% down to the individual again. Back to purpose. Yeah. Season. Yeah. It always goes back to the fundamentals.
Yeah, of who you are. I think every decision you make kind of flows back to who you are, and if it makes sense for you. If it doesn't make sense for you, then you don't have an incentive to do it.
No, absolutely. And no, I don't know this feeling I'm getting. Like, I'm just so proud of you. Like, I'm just so proud of you. Like, everything that you're doing, and you still keep very humble, very encouraging, very joyful. Like, it's so amazing. It's so amazing to see. And it just makes me want to ask this question as a doctor. Like, what makes a doctor valuable, would you say?
Oh, what makes a doctor valuable? That is a hard question. Just because you put doctor in the mix, I think it makes it hard, because a doctor does loads of different things. I would say what makes a doctor valuable is the fact that they care. They actually care about your health and whatever state it is in at the time that you meet them, regardless of what their area of specialty is. And the fact that they will want to explore whatever they can do to help you get better and help you get back to your baseline. And in the process of that, hopefully educate you and empower you and teach you how to advocate for yourself in case future things, pop up later down the line. That, I think, is what makes a doctor valuable. Aside from all the other skills and all the stuff and all the things that you develop along the way, I think just where their heart is.
Their heart is?
Yeah.
So, like, the heart for the people.
The heart for the people. The heart for impact.
For impact. That's deep. you make me want to retrain now. No, that is so deep. That is so deep. And it's so good to just have you on, because just have a different perspective. And I love the fact that you're not shying away from pursuing your dreams and your aspirations and getting out there, like content creating on YouTube and posting, helping people, but like in the finance space, linking it to health. It's so funny because they don't know, but we know. Like, the first time we actually met was not arranged.
I know.
Like, the first time we met was actually at an angel investing event. I was so shocked. I was like, I'm like, what are you doing here? I'm sure you're thinking, what am I doing here? So it goes to show, like, we both interested in the same things, but completely like different journeys. And I've seen actually that you've been posting more about venture capital and looking at exciting health startups. When did you get into I guess, like, looking at the startups and venture capital space?
If I'm really honest, and I haven't talked about this publicly, this is the first time, this is a little exclusive. So my first ever introduction to the world of venture capital was actually when I was 12. Wow. So I love cars. Anyone who knows me knows Yosa loves a good whip. Like, I love a nice car. Like, I'm that girl. If anyone's getting a car, they're like, Yosa, what do you think? And I also love interior design. And I always used to think, like, how do people afford houses like this? Because the maths doesn't make sense. And I didn't know anyone who lived in that type of house, or, a big house, or had like a really nice car. And so in trying to understand that, I kind of, was introduced to the world of business. And I actually remember back when, before AirPods were a thing, or wireless earphones were a thing, I love music. That hasn't changed over the years. Not a lot of things have changed over the years. And, we didn't have a dishwasher growing up. I was a dishwasher, washing those plates. And I listened to Afrobeats. And I used to get really frustrated that my earphones would come out because they would get caught on the cabinet handles. And I just thought, like, why can't we have wireless earphones? And this is what, like 2010? Like, earlier. I think Beats had just come out. Beats by Dr. Dre.
Okay.
And the iPod Nano. Like, it was that era.
iPod Nano?
Do you remember?
Yeah, I remember the little one.
Yeah. Like, it was that era. And so I was like, I want to make wireless earphones, but I don't have wireless earphones money.
I see.
So I literally, I don't draw, but one of my friends wanted to study GCSE art. So I was like, can you sketch earphones for me? And I actually found the earphone sketches in the loft. And she drew them out. And I was like, no, I want them like this. I want them like that. And I thought, okay, now I need money. Like, I need someone who's going to buy into this idea. And so obviously I asked around, who's given a little toddler, a little young girl in secondary school money? Like, what did I know? I didn't know what I know now about business. And so I thought, okay, I need to do something else. And that actually led me to crowdfunding. And so back in the day, Kickstarter, that's Kickstarter does not, their website now is not what it looked like back in the day. Like, I've been able to see Kickstarter's journey. Yeah.
Did you invest in Kickstarter?
No, I didn't invest in Kickstarter. I wanted people who use Kickstarter to invest in my earphone idea. So I was like, okay, now I just need a manufacturer. So I used to literally like Google earphone manufacturer in China, and I'd write down their contact details, and I would send emails, and I'd ask them if they could basically create these earphones for me. And in my head, I thought, if I have a product, like something that kind of works, I can put it on Kickstarter and then get people to give me money to make my earphones. So that's literally how I got into the world of business. Now I know all the buzzwords. I know that I was trying to create an MVP, but back in the day, I just
you're saying Chinese manufacturer getting an MVP, just trying to build something as quick as you can to put it to.
And then if people bought into it, then I have my product market fit. Boom.
You had these brains when you were.
When I was a little girl. Yeah.
Wow.
So I could have been the AirPods before the AirPods.
Yeah, and part of me, when you were describing the story, said like you were like the founder, like the Apple, like you made the
undercover.
Okay, wow. Okay, that's amazing.
So that's how I got into business. Just the idea that you can create something that doesn't exist to fix an issue is insane to me. Like that stuff is insane.
And people will actually throw you money. Like they'll throw you money to try it. Not that it's successful, but
just to see if it works. Like that is crazy. The fact that I can actually change something that I really care about. Like what?
Yeah. And wow, Kickstarter. I didn't know what crowdfunding meant until like maybe 3 years ago.
Oh wow.
I did not know what I literally came across not Kickstarter. Is it Crowdcube?
Yeah.
Crowdcube. I came across that first, then other ones sort of popped up. Then I used to see like lots of companies listed and they were like raising and it had the percentage like 50% raise. But even at that time I didn't understand how to, like, if I was to buy shares or give them money, like how much equity do I own? I had no idea how to calculate stuff. But I think that's even quite important because the government has a lot of schemes, like I think the EIS scheme and the SEIS scheme, which you can invest, but like the government, like I guess, refunds you a percentage. I don't know the exact percentages. You can research this, but like a disclaimer. The government will. So if you invest like £5,000 into a startup on one of these platforms that's eligible for SEIS investment, if the company like goes bust, the government like give you, let's just say, hypothetically speaking, 50% back. So you get like 2.5k back. So originally your investment was only £2,500. However, if the company goes to the moon and like you got a significant amount of equity, like you can make serious like X returns.
Yeah.
And that's something I just found out maybe a couple of months ago. So and I think some people listening might not even have. They're finding about it today. So the venture capital space always excites me. Hence why I saw myself in that angel investing room learning more about how does an individual invest into companies and like how we can do it. And one thing I actually saw as well is that you participated in Diversity VC.
I did.
You did?
I did during the pandemic, yeah.
Now, what is that? Talk to us about that.
So basically, if you're trying to break into the venture capital or the VC space, they give you the tools. You work alongside them. They equip you with the basics. I shouldn't say the basics. They basically condense down a lot of information and they equip you so that if you do get a job, which is the goal of the program, then you can excel in your job role. But this was pandemic time, so they actually had to stop the in-person program and they held it online, and so you applied for it and then they had literally masterclasses online, and so that's how I learned about cap tables, all that fun stuff.
Oh wow, so you learned the details of what?
Yeah. Fourth year it was the end of fourth year, beginning of final year. I was doing placement and then I come back, I'll be like, okay, I need to quickly join in and make notes. But that's how I became a part of it.
And the interest, the passions have just grew over time.
Yeah.
You're watching companies in the health tech space.
I was investing in companies in the pandemic.
Oh, you are an investor? Wow. Wow. Okay. So you have companies in your portfolio that you've invested in?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. Some of them I've sold and I've made money. Some of them I was like, I would never do this again.
but I mean, that is experience way more than anyone who hasn't started, because you already know, like, you'll never invest in companies like this. Maybe it's the founders, it's the product, it's the product's market fit, the sector,
the timing.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, if we wanted to, I'll speak on behalf of the listeners as well. We wanted to like get involved in investing into companies ourselves, what would you recommend? Go on something like Diversity VC or go to something else?
Oh, that's a really good question. I would say do your research first. So what is your end goal? Like, are you just trying to flip a bag really quickly? Because then you could do that with volatile stocks. Not that I'm saying that you should invest in volatile
No
stocks.
financial advice.
Or are you trying to hold on to a company and then see it go from, being a startup to actually being a company, and then they exit or they exit or they're acquired by another company? Like, what is your end goal? I would say educate yourself, because money doesn't just grow on trees. You labor for your money, right? And you want it to work best for you. There's loads of different courses. So I would say the Angel Investing School is a good place to start. YouTube, like just understanding the world of VC, like how it works, what does equity actually mean? What is a cap table? What happens every single time a company goes through a round? Like, what does that mean for the percentages that I own? Am I being diluted? Like, what is dilution? Are there anti-dilution options? Like, all of that stuff. I would say you need to learn before you do it. I do appreciate that there's only so much you can learn theoretically, and then when you actually do it, you learn a lot more.
Yeah.
And your heart is there because your money is there. So really, it'll cause you to want to learn a bit more.
Where your treasure is, there also your heart lies.
Exactly. So there's courses, there's YouTube, there's blogs.
Yeah, and
there's
I said that
doing it.
Angel Investing School.
Yes, the Angel Investing School. They literally have a course that they run on all of that stuff.
That's amazing.
YouTube.
And it's so interesting because for me, I've got like friends now, I can actually say friends that started their own company.
Amazing.
And not just because they're my friends, but I'm thinking, listen, if you're flying off, I want to go with you. Like, I want to invest and also like help support them. So like,
exactly.
But because when it's just friends, like, I can't just like give you 1K and like I need some legals and I want to do it properly.
You have to do it properly.
Yeah, that's why I need to learn about more how to invest in companies.
Definitely. And there's loads of resources out there. There is a lot of resources.
Maybe what we'll do, because we also have the blog as well, if you're listening, www.valuablepodcast.com, where we summarize what we've been talking about on the episode and with some of the guests. And what we might do is when I write up this episode, we can put some links in terms of the books that was mentioned, the details around like cap tables and venture capital, and maybe interesting startups that you guys should look at, and also link together all the different pages where you can find all the information that's of value that we talked about. So yeah, they shouldn't worry about that.
Exactly.
But
got them patented. Got them sorted.
I personally think this episode has got them sorted. That's just for the bonus round. But I am so glad we've done this.
Likewise. I'm actually so happy that it happened.
Yeah, it is good. And you've inspired me. Just speaking to you, there's a lot of things I didn't know about you. Like I said, it's like sitting down with you, it's like I'm looking beyond the scrubs. Like, who are you? And yeah, just the way I like to sort of end this podcast is ask the guests, like, if you were to, and 3 is a lot. I know 3 is a lot. So if you have 1 or 2, that's completely fine. But if you were to just mention 3 things, looking at your journey from like when you were 11 and you're trying to raise crowdfunding money, you're at the same time you're writing goals about you want to become a doctor and the best one, like till now, 3 valuable tips on your journey, like what would that be?
3 valuable tips. I do love the number 3 valuable tips. I would say the first one's be audacious. I think I've been able to do a lot because I've been bold and been very unapologetic about the things that I want, even to the point where people have said, I don't think that's good for you. I don't think you should do that, just because they didn't understand or they didn't have, the information that I knew. But I still did it anyway. And those are the same people like, oh my gosh, I'm glad you did it. So be audacious despite what people say. Like, if you have something, go for it. The second thing that I would say is think big. Like, think bigger. Think big. Like, don't limit yourself. I think the world kind of puts us in a box anyway. And so why would you want to put yourself in a box too? Think big. If you want to do something, think, okay, but how can I impact more people, right? If you want to learn a new skill, think, okay, but how can I add on top of this skill? Like, develop the habits of thinking big, just because it stops you from limiting yourself. And the third thing I would say as a tip is be forgiving and be patient. I'm going to put them in one. Reason being, you will make mistakes along the way. You don't know everything and you don't know what you don't know, which is even scary.
Yeah.
And so you will make mistakes, but as you can pick yourself up. Like, as long as you're still breathing and you're alive and you're in good health, it's actually okay. It's not that deep. Like, if you lose money, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
If you make a mistake, like, it's not the end. Okay, some mistakes, can't lie. Not them saying that, you know. Yeah. But generally speaking, you can recover from it. So be forgiving of yourself and be patient. Okay. Like, no, Rome was not built in a day. All of the beautiful things that we are taking advantage of now weren't built in a second, right? Like, it took time, it took processes, you know, for it to occur.
And seasons.
And seasons. And seasons. So really be patient. Like, trust God, if you believe in God or some form of high power. Trust in your ability and trust in yourself and just keep going.
Amazing.
So I would say.
Thank you so much for coming on the Valuable Podcast. For the guests that are listening, where can they find you on social media?
Sure. So on Instagram, it's Dr Uyiosa. On YouTube, it's also Dr Uyiosa with a 1, because apparently there's another Uyiosa on YouTube. And on LinkedIn, if you're on LinkedIn, then it's Dr Uyiosa Ogunbor. And if you haven't subscribed, I have a newsletter on Substack, and I think the link is substack.druyiosa.com. So if you're interested in all things health, business and finance, then you can find some gems on there.
Thank you. But last but not least, if you are listening, this is your call to, you know, smash the like button or subscribe or share or follow wherever you are listening or watching this episode. If you enjoyed it, not if you didn't enjoy it, if you enjoyed it, because it's for free and it really helps spread the words and get this episode to other people. And also, if you want to join the Valuable community, which is a community of young professionals and students who are striving to become more valuable, helping each other in terms of the value that we can add and we can provide, make sure to click the link somewhere in the bio, fill out the form. One of the team will review it and get you invited. And we have merch. We have valuable hoodies for sale. They're very, very exclusive. We don't have a lot, but again, if you want to support or if you just want this comfortable hoodie and join the club, then click the link in the bio and purchase your valuable hoodie. But I'm your host, Victor Sasanya, and this is the Valuable Podcast.